I don't know why I don't.
Good day, Steve and audience. It's
let me know if we have
Rob,
audio.
aka CDN Freight Broker or Canadian Freight Broker. So I've been working and discussing. So I'm going to put together this little presentation. It's about 13, 14 slides. Basically, it's not about rates. It's not about complaining about anything. It's really just about appreciation for the sales and dispatch process required for both freight brokers and carriers that go out there to get the freight to get onto the load boards. So that's really what this is about, is just taking a minute to either, maybe there's some drivers, company drivers who are on here watching that aren't really that familiar with the whole process, how that works in the back end. This could be for someone who's been trucking for 30, 40 years, and sometimes, you just forget. But if you've been in the truck for a long time, sometimes you forget what some of the processes are just to get that freight that you're hauling. Because as a driver, you're so appreciated in the industry. And then on the flip side of that, sometimes we forget what it takes to get that freight on your tail, so to speak. And then also for those of you that are either becoming an owner-operator or thinking about getting your own brokerage, wherever want to get into either side of it, sales, dispatch, this will give you a little insight and just peel the curtain back just a little bit to help you see what's going on. So I always like to start with the why. And I'm just going to make this, I'll just turn this over to here. Okay, sorry about that. I'll just put this over here so it's out of the way. So the why. We would just basically take a few minutes to appreciate what it takes to secure and service a customer as a freight broker or a carrier. Let me just go back up the screen here, sorry. Okay, so basically where does it start with? Well, you got to find your place. This fast-paced world of logistics, it starts with the manufacturing, the production of goods. We've got the distribution and the end user. So we got logistics. And where do you fit in the cog? What part of it? Are we servicing, hauling for raw goods and commodities? Are we hauling for the distributors with the finished products, or are we getting it to the end users? Then we got the finance side of it that's involved, along with legal and insurance. So it all begins with sales. So hopefully you guys can see it. I'm going to kind of jump a little bit, but basically we got this circle of life. And this circle just keeps going around and around. It's kind of boring, but that's the consistent model to do as a carrier or freight broker looking to get customers. So it starts with the new customer development. And actually, I'll just click my next screen. This gives it a little bit closer view. So we start with the new customer development. So that's out there, how you're attaining that. We won't bore you with every little detail, but basically getting new customers. There's all kinds of steps and strategies. But it all starts with, you got to get customers. You're going to then always continue to get new customers. But then once you get a customer, it's really important to spend the time required to maintain those customers, because getting a customer in this industry, in trucking and logistics, is very difficult in 2022. And so once you get a customer, it's in your best interest, unless it's a bad customer that you don't appreciate the services or you don't like what they do or how they treat you, then that's a different story. But if they're a decent customer, you want to put the appropriate efforts in place to build a strong long-term relationships. As part of that, you're going to be in sales quoting potential live loads, quoting future loads and live loads. And then you're going to send your load dispatch details to the dispatcher if you have that. Sometimes if you're a small brokerage, you're going to be doing both. Just keep that in mind. If you're going to start out as a one-person brokerage, or you're going to become an agent, you may be doing all these steps in place. And so I'm just going to go back up a screen here just to get over here. So we got the load dispatch details, and then you're going to see how it moves over. So like I said, unfortunately, I just want to try to make it big. So once you get that dispatch details over, whether that's you as a dispatcher or you actually have a dispatcher, the dispatcher will take over, which becomes the next. You'll see what we talk about, the dispatch functions. But right now we're still in sales. The other aspect in brokeraging and or in carriers is assisting dispatch with dropped carriers, because you book loads, you have everything in place. Sometimes the truck breaks down or the carrier cancels the load for whatever reason. So sometimes sales has to help dispatch to recover those. Also, sales will assist dispatch with problems and or extra charges that may occur in a load. And then, because sometimes if there is extra charges that the carrier is charging, If you're the broker and the carrier is saying, hey, we've got wait times, or the destination was actually further mileage, or it wasn't the same city as on the bill of lading, like say, let's just say that the driver arrives, gets a bill of lading, the destination doesn't match up with what you provided. You find out that, yes, the customer made an error to you as the broker, and the destination is different than what was advised, so the rate changes and you got to work through that, or if there's driver wait charges, etc. If dispatch determines that, say, a load delivers and there's a claim, got to get involved in that aspect, assist with dispatching and finalizing loads as required. And then the next big part that comes into the life cycle is the carrier lane development relationships. And I'll just go up the screen here. Actually, the next one, this brings us back to the sales function. So we've got, I'll come to this so we got just a recap. New customers, maintain existing, quote potential live loads, get details for the dispatch purposes, assist with recovery loads if a carrier falls off, or a driver calls in sick and they can't do the load, assist with any problems, charges, dealing with claims, dealing with finalizing loads. Now this carrier lane development relationship, this is what, and also rate matrices. So when we talk about how a lot of the freight is not moved on the load boards, this is it. When you, as a broker or a carrier, particularly as a broker, if you go out there and you land a customer and they've got some steady freight, it's a real pain to have to every single day be dealing with the regular, dealing with the load boards, because you might not be working with the same carrier, so you're always doing new carrier packages. So as a broker, you want to try to find a network of carriers that will help service some of this freight. Or if you have specialized freight like reefer, hazmat, flatbed, oversized, sometimes the load boards don't do the justice that is necessary for some specialized freight. So you need to go out there, not just to sell the customers. You've got a customer, you've determined what the needs are. You now need to go out there and find carriers to help fulfill that need. And that's what you're doing as the brokerage. That's the real brunt of it. And then developing rates and stuff in those lanes. So basically, once we've got the sales cycle flowing, we now get into the dispatch and operations. And dispatch and operations, what's key there is that basically you can sell all day. However, if you don't execute what you sell, you're not going to get the repeat business. So long-term customer relationships require sales and dispatch in harmony. So we get on to now the sales and how it overlaps to the core functions of dispatch. So with this side, basically, sales, they get these customers. You got to match trucks to available loads. So whether you're a broker hiring outside carriers, or you're a carrier and you got 3 or 4 drivers and you got customers, you need to match the drivers to the loads. So you got to dispatch those book loads with all the details. I could do an entire section just about proper dispatching of loads. Recover drop carriers. You got to trace shipments, notify sales customers of status of the loads, address resolve problems, extra charges, any claims, issues. You got to finalize the loads for proper invoicing, make sure you got the PODs, any other issues, make sure you got the PO numbers listed where they're supposed to be in the system so that it appears on the invoice, like whatever your customer requires for their final freight invoice, if that requires the PO numbers, etc., the person who approved it, etc., the proof of delivery, make sure it's clear and signed. And then again, when in between you booking loads as a dispatcher, you need to develop your relationship with your carriers and also assisting sales with rate matrices. So sometimes sales may say, hey, we've got a new customer that we need to find some trucks in a certain lane. They may go out there so that they can keep selling. And then as a dispatcher, you'd be out there trying to find the trucks. Now, keep in mind, if you're a small broker or an agent starting out, all of these steps you're doing yourself. So you're juggling multiple hats on a daily basis. So again, I'll just go back up here and just a quick summary. So the dispatcher has to deal with matching available loads, dispatch those loads, recover drop carriers, trace and track loads, communicate to all the parties involved, address issues, extra charges, deal with claims. You're preparing the shipment for final invoicing and proof of deliveries, developing relations with carriers and lane development, as well as rates, trying to establish some consistent rates in certain lanes. And then basically this brings us right back to the finding your place requires consistent effort and execution in the cogs of the logistics world. So summary, attaining and retaining customers is difficult. Seeing that load on a load board takes a lot more work than one would expect. So we hopefully this short presentation will help you appreciate the processes required. So basically, as a summary, take a moment today. I'll just move this out of the way. Sorry. Here we go. Sorry about that. Call a broker that paid you great rates in the past. Thank them. Ask them if there's any lanes that you can service or get on their list of preferred carriers. Be proactive and show your broker partners that you want to be part of the solution. Without shipper, there's no loads. Without driver, there's no brokers. No brokers equals less loads. And I specifically said less loads without brokers because yes, carriers don't need brokers to go out and get customers. However, we've been working in the world of load boards. So the load board is an easy way for smaller carriers to get into the trucking game with their own trucks and find freight where they don't have to do all those sales processes. They just have to pick up and call the broker. The broker's done all that background. So that's what this whole presentation was about, just to appreciate the process required to get the freight available on those load boards. Yes, we have to deal with the pricing and we can be upset about if it's too low and the price of fuel. That's not what this is about. It's simply to be aware of the process required, depending on where you are in your career and what you're doing, but just understand that there's a lot of steps involved and appreciate the process. Thanks. Back to Steve for discussion with the live chat. A copy of this presentation will be available. I'll send it to Steve, and if he wants to share it out, he's welcome to. Thanks so much.